In this video, I'm going to be walking you through the process of color grading your footage to match between two different cameras if you're putting together a multi-camera edit. Hey folks, welcome. My name is Belal Khan. In this video, this is part 2 of a several part series on editing together multi-camera sequences within Adobe Premiere. Specifically, this video, I want to walk you through the process. What we've done up to this point so far is we've created our multi-camera sequence that is ready to edit. Now, normally, you would want to edit first and then color grade later. I like to do it the opposite. I like to color grade first and then I'll do the edit. So that's what we're going to do. Now, the process is straightforward and simple. You should have your project file saved from before. So what we're going to do here is, so you'll notice here, we've got two different videos, two different files, and they're both really close. And one of the secrets, if you want to call it that, one of the secrets to getting cameras to match is to first match exposure between both cameras. In this case, you'll notice if I just go ahead and expand, let me just go ahead and expand this this workspace right here, so this way you can see it better. And so I think we've already lined everything up, right? Yeah, everything should be lined up. So if we go into so right now I actually recorded the audio on my cell phone for this one, just for the sake of this sample. But one of the things you'll notice is that you have a wide angle, essentially a straight camera shot right here, which is my A cam, and you'll notice it's a little off, right? In the corner here, you'll see there's an outlet that's showing up. He's a little bit off center. It could have paid a little bit more attention to that, but we're gonna fix that. And then also you'll notice in the second angle right here, and if you want to know how to switch when you're in the multi-camera sequence, all you have to do is press 1, 2, 3, or 4, whichever camera. And since we only have only 2 angles, I can switch between angle 1 and 2. If you had a third or fourth angle, then you'd be able to do that. But since we don't, we're not gonna worry about it. So in both of these cameras, the settings that I had dialed in any camera is you got to look at the shutter speed, you have to look at the ISO, you have to look at your aperture. I'm not going to go into what each of those are, but those are your trifecta, the trinity for making sure that your exposure settings are dialed in. Generally speaking, in this case, when you're dealing with video, if you're shooting at 24 frames a second, a shutter of 1/50 is the appropriate, which is what I did on both angles over here. And then in terms of your aperture, I wanted to get the shallowest depth of field possible. And so what we did was we dialed both cameras down to an f1.8. The wide angle here, that's a Sigma 18 to 35 set at about maybe 18 or 20 millimeters, I think 24 max. I don't think it's at quite at 24. And then this here is a 50 millimeter from Canon, f1.8. So those are the two lenses that we had. I put both cameras at f1.8. I put both cameras at shutter over 150, and I forgot what the ISO setting was, but essentially, since the same amount of light gathering ability, same type of crop sensor camera, right? It's a 1.6x crop on the M6 Mark II, which is what this angle here is, and this is a Canon 70D, and so I believe it was ISO maybe 400 or 250. I think it was 250. I think it's ISO 250 across both of these. So, and the idea was to make sure that the histogram, that's how you kind of pay attention. You look at the histogram, you got to make sure your highlights are not blown out and your shadows are not completely crushed. This is what's going to allow you to squeeze out, as much information as possible from the image that you've been able to capture. So now that we kind of gone over the technical stuff and the theory of what we're trying to do and how we went about capturing this, let's go ahead and start grading our footage. Here's the process. So first thing you want to do is, from the previous step, what we had done is we created a couple of sequences, which we nested within a multi-camera sequence, which is done now in the main sequence that's going to be edited later. So what we want to do is open up our original sequences. So we have A cam and B cam. You look up at A cam, you'll notice that the audio is silent. You got the main audio track here, you got your video open. What you want to do is we're going to be applying a color grade that is not destructive. What does that mean? A non-destructive color grade or even non-destructive edit has to do with the fact that we're not going to be doing anything particular. We're not going to be doing anything to the footage itself, but we're going to be adding what's called an adjustment layer. And the way we do that is right click within the project file, you go to new item and you select adjustment layer. You click OK. It'll usually give you the settings that's based on the timeline that you've selected. You click OK, and then you simply drag and drop that adjustment layer, and then you extend it all the way until it covers the entire thing. And that's how you create an adjustment layer. You want to do that to both. You want to do that to both of the angles here. So take that same adjustment layer and drag it into this sequence, extend the sequence all the way, and extend that completely. And so now we can start color grading. So simply make sure, oh yeah, and while you're color grading, make sure your sequence, because we had set up multi-camera display. So go to display mode, go back to composite video. So this way you see the full video. And then from here, one of the things I want to do is first, before I color grade, actually, let me fix up the framing of this. I want to keep them centered. If I want to make sure, find out whether or not it's centered or not, right clicking on the display right here, make sure you're right clicking on program, not source. Go to program, right click, you go to safe margins, and boom, you'll see where the center marks are. Now from here, make sure your footage is selected. You go to effect controls. From here, and I'm just going to go ahead and simply scale this up just enough so the outlet kind of disappears. I drag this down until it's at the very edge, and then I simply drag this over so he is more or less centered. I realize I need to extend that a little bit more, so I extend that a little bit more, and then make sure he is, boom, there you go. And now he is centered. This is where we were before, and now we've just kind of punched in a little bit. Now let's do the color grade. Select the adjustment layer, and then you click on color. If for whatever reason you don't see any of this, you don't see learning, assembly, edit, color, and so on, all you got to do is go to window, and then window, and then you click, you select workspaces. If you don't have workspaces selected, then that won't be there. But if it's not there for whatever reason, make sure it's selected. From here, click on color, and boom, you're gonna get something that looks like this. Let me go ahead and, this is what's called the Lumetri panel. Lumetri color, Lumetri scopes. It's essentially the way to color grade within W Premiere. Just to kind of give you a quick overview, this here is your Lumetri scope, right? This is going to tell you exactly, this is the information that you're seeing in terms of the primary colors, red, green, and blue. Those are the three colors that make up the image that you're looking at here, RGB. In terms of how it's translating it, and as you just go ahead and sift through the thing, you'll notice that the colors are shifting and changing. Now, how do you adjust this? What do you want to look at? Because there's a lot of things here. Just going to go a quick overview. You got your basic corrections, right? We're going to start here, and then you've got your creative stuff. This is more or less about making the colors a little more punchy if you want it. This is fine tuning in regards to colors and what you want, what colors you want to pop, what colors you don't want to pop. Then we go into color wheels and matching. This is more or less macro settings in terms of shadows, highlights, and midtones. Then you have HSL Secondary. I use this for skin tones and face shadows and whatnot. And then you have vignetting. We're gonna go through this in more detail now. So first things first, what you wanna do is you wanna be able to recover as much information as you can that perhaps might be blown out. How do you know that? What I like to do is when it comes to the highlights, the top area in regards to red, green, and blue has to do with highlights, and the bottom area has to do with shadows, right? And it's also telling me which primary colors are in the highlights and which colors are in the shadows, and what might be worth recovering, or can you recover something. First thing I like to do is I go to basic corrections, and then from here I look at highlights and I try to drag that down, and not too much, it's just enough to know whether or not I can get maybe a good chunk of that below 90. That's where I like to be. So from here, then I look at the white, tone down the whites until I can bring that down all the way. And I like to basically keep 90 as my top end. And then from here, if you want to extend the highlights out a little bit more to give you a little bit more, I guess more of a dimmer look, but something that's a little bit less exposed, you can do that here, but it's more or less, it's what I would recommend is make sure that your top is at 90, right? I basically recovered all the information. It's all there. All the blues are there. All the reds are there. You'll also notice right here on the right, there's blue, and most of this image is mostly blue, right? It's purple, right? Because there's a little bit of red too, kind of mixed in. And then on the top here, we've got a little bit of a red light. And so you'll see this predominantly red over here. It's just letting me know exactly what colors are where, in case your monitor is not properly fully calibrated. So you can trust what's coming out of this image. The next thing we look at is, although you have the option of creative, the only two I guess adjustments that I would consider looking at, but I'm not gonna bother, is one is vibrance. And you'll see how if I push the vibrance up, those colors become significantly more vibrant. And if I push the saturation up, the colors become significantly more saturated. Now, if you want to reset anything because you pushed it somewhere and you don't like it, just double click, boom, that resets, double click, boom, that resets. Next here is curves. Now there's two types of curves. There's RGB curves, and this allows you, this is a little bit advanced. This allows you to kind of adjust the shadows on this side and the highlights on that. I would tell you for this particular, the scope of this video and this tutorial series, don't worry about this. This is a little bit more advanced. What you want to look at are hue versus saturation, that's 1, and hue versus hue, that's 2. So what hue versus saturation, what I like about this is that, let's say you got a bunch of colors here, but you don't want all of them to show up, right? So what you can do is you can start by just dragging it all down, or rather you can start by eliminating which colors you want to minimize. So let's say you've got blue and you're like, you know what, I don't really want the blue. It's kind of really a little too blue. So you can tone that down. And even here, you've got a little bit of that red. So select the range for that red. And then I can try to tone down the red. Now, look at what's happening, right? This gentleman is a little bit better, a little bit more fair complexion. There's a lot more pink and red in his skin. And so as a result, when I tone down the red, although it's toning it down in the top corner here, his face is also appearing desaturated. And so that's the thing that you just want to be wary of. Whenever you're shooting and trying to bring the picture into, and you're capturing this stuff, just make sure that you try to separate the individual as much as you can from the background, right? And so you want to create contrasting colors that allows you a lot more flexibility in the edit. So so that's just an FYI. So you're not going to be, so if you do any adjustments to the red, it's going to show up on the face as well. That's basically what I'm saying. Now the question now is, what if you want to change a color, right? It's like, oh, I shot with blue, but maybe I was looking for a little bit of green. So that's where you want to look at or consider the hue, right? So the hue, what this does is you basically select the range, start and end, and then from within that range, you can go ahead and shift the color. So let's say you wanted pink, or you wanted a yellow or green, or whatever the other colors are, right? You can literally shift the existing color to whatever color that you want, right? Now, again, be wary of, so for example, in this case, you want to shift to red, and you can do that, but it's also going to change whatever else is red on the screen. Now, color wheels and matching. This has to do with the Lumetri scope. Again, if you want to bring down the blacks, create a little bit more contrast, boom, the image is a lot more punchy. And then you want to up the midtones. What I'm looking to do is just kind of increase the brightness of the face a little bit, and but at the same time make the image a little bit more contrasty and punchy. And so now the thing that I want to look at, and this is the most important part, is how do you go about eliminating any shadows that might be in the sunken areas of the eyes, right? So this is where HSL Secondary comes into play. This right here is the crux of this tutorial. Because you're dealing with a talking head multi-camera video edit, this is the part that you want to be able to get right. Is that because you'll, even if you don't do any edit to the colors and whatnot, but you just want to make your face look a little less tired, or a little more evenly, or more balanced in terms of the lighting, this is where you do it. Step one is you want to select the eyedropper, right? And make sure that it's your, you got to make sure that your adjustment layer is selected, not your image, right? Throughout this entire thing, right? So if I go here and I select the, because here, this is a mistake that's committed commonly, right? So everything that I just showed you right now, because I had the video selected and not the adjustment layer selected, all the changes were being applied to the video. Now, the effect of whether it's being applied to adjustment layer or it's being applied to the video is irrelevant in this scope. But let's say you have multiple files from the same angle, right? And you've synchronized it all under one file. Then if you apply it to just one video, then it'll only be applied to that one video. But if you apply it to adjustment layer, that adjustment layer extends into multiple clips, then that same change will be then reflected across all the clips. So that's why it's always a good idea to apply the changes to the video. But if you find that you selected the video and you did not select the adjustment layer, all you have to do is go back, select the video, under the effects control panel, click on Lumetri color, highlight that, do Control X or Command X if you're on a Mac, select the adjustment layer, and then paste it, Control V or Command V, depending on what platform you're on. So now all of the changes that we had applied are on the adjustment layer, and you can see the slight subtle change when I select or deselect or make visible or invisible the adjustment layer. Right, so now let's go on to the whole face factor. You select the eyedropper tool and you select the face. Nothing happened. Well, watch this. You'll notice that certain things appeared over here. All you have to do is click on color/gray, and this allows you to see what exactly, or what part of the face is selected exactly. Now, sometimes you may want to do color black. This gives you a more contrasty thing, because maybe you're selecting something that's light, or in this case, it's a fair complexion. Contrasting that against black would give you a better idea, as opposed to if it was, or you could just do white and black. But if you do this might be a little bit more challenging to see, so you can do color. Now it's a question of adjusting the hue, saturation, and luminosity in terms of what you found and selected. So we're gonna go ahead and adjust that a little bit. And as you'll notice, as I drag this around, anything that matches the color tone of what I selected with the eyedropper tool, it will, as I shift that between the reds and the yellows, greens, blues, right? That's where it's going to find it within that particular tone. So I'm going to leave it around here because we're dealing with skin tones. It's more in the red area. Now you want to bump up the saturation and luminosity, right? I want to be able to capture the space under the eyebrows within the sunken part of the eye. So we grab this, we extend the saturation and move it over a little bit and try to get it to a point where we get as much as possible. Then we take the luminosity, right? And then we bump that, but oh, look at that. I might have selected too much. So I just simply drag that over until I'm only selecting the face, right? Until there you go. I think this balance right here, less background and more face. And you'll notice, like, yo, how come the side of the face is not selected? I don't want to select the side of the face, because that is a separation, like in my face, right? I got a separation light over here, and then I got this separation light over here. And if I was adjusting and I wanted to adjust the color of my face that shows up like right here, like that's the part I want selected. And just to kind of give you an idea, like you'll notice, right? His nose, you got a highlight over here, you got a highlight on the edge to separate him from the background. I want to maintain that. I don't want to change that. And so the fact that it's not selected is good. Next step, you click on denoise and you just drag that all the way to the top, and then you take blur. So this way that there's a little bit of a fall off. There's not a sharp edge between your grading here. And then you just simply move that over, and you'll notice that it's like spilling over into the edge. I try to maintain a little bit less of that so we can see. And this is where I just do a little bit of adjustments here. If there's no altering that, that's okay. So you'll notice it's the hue part that when I make adjustments, the edges kind of tend to get a little bit more contract a little bit more, and that's cool. So I made that adjustment. Now from here just deselect that so I know I can see the face. I click on the triple circle, which gives me control over shadows, midtones, and highlights. And now from here, what I want to do is, actually I'm going to skip that. I want to go to contrast, right? I want to decrease the contrast on the face. And then so what we do is select contrast, slide that back, and boom. You'll notice I either got really dark shadows or I got no shadows. Now this looks kind of weird, but I would say maybe go a third of the way in the opposite direction. Bump up the mid-tone brightness. No, actually, maybe tone it. Yeah, make it to the point where it's not like if I do this, I'm matching the highlight. I don't want to do that. It looks really pale. So we just make the adjustment just enough, maybe very subtle stuff, right? Maybe what I want to do is I want to boost the shadows just slightly because the shadows are in the eye area. And what happens if I boost the highlights? I guess a little bit. Now I want to add some color to the face, right? I like to have some color in the face. So this is where the skin tone can be adjusted. If you look at the temperature, do I want a colder image or do I want a warmer image? Boom, all of a sudden there's a little bit more warmth in the face. It's a little too saturated, right? So what I'll do is I'll look at the saturation and I'll tone down the saturation. Boom, right? Contrast, again, I'll make it slightly little less contrasty. Go back to this, I'm just making sure that everything is selected where I wanted. And you'll notice here, I'm noticing right here. So if I de-blur this and I denoise this, I'm noticing that some parts of that is not coming through. So how do I make sure that that is selected? So there we go. I adjusted the saturation a little bit in the opposite direction. Turn that off, turn on denoising and add a little bit blur. And now there we go. Now if we do reduce the contrast a little bit, the shadows disappear. Adjust the midtones just enough. Boom. Now his face looks a little less tired. And this was early morning, so you're gonna have that look, that decaffeinated look. So from here, saturation, just enough. I can even add a little bit more warmth if I wanted. Move the tint either towards the green or towards the red. I'll move it a little bit more towards the red to match again with that highlight. So this is where we are. This is the before and this is the after. It's a subtle difference, right? It doesn't have to be a day and night difference, or maybe you do find it to be a day and night difference. But the key thing here that I wanted the goal was to eliminate the dark circles or the sunkenness and the tiredness look in the eyes and bring that out, desaturate that, give a little bit more warmth to the face. And next, after that, is just literally little tweaks here and there. I want the colors to be a little bit more punchy, so I go into the vibrance section, push that up a little bit. And do I want to play anything with the saturation? Maybe tone down the saturation. Just want the colors to be a little bit more. Go into the curves. We talked about hue and saturation. So let's say we've got the blue purple area. So highlight the range and then select right in the middle, and I can bump that up or I could bump it down, right? So let's say you really want them colors to be really popping. Go ahead and do that. But let's say I want it to be different color, right? I select the range again, and then I drag that down, orange and pink or coral or whatever. This right here, I think that would look really good. Or you just really want to go green, whatever the color is, whatever you really want, you could shift that into however you want it. And so this is where it's a good idea to just kind of, sometimes you want to think beforehand and just go with whatever the original is. Or you can adjust it later. So now this is pretty much, I think we're done with this particular angle. Now the trick for the rest of this tutorial is in matching the angle of the other camera. So simple trick, here's what we're gonna do. So let's go back to assembly. It brings us back into that timeline. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and select the adjustment layer. I select the Lumetri color, so Control C or Command C. Now I go to Becam, right, where the original setup was. Let's get to a point, there we go. Select the adjustment layer, make sure the adjustment layer and not the other one, and then Control V or Command V, boom. All the same settings are applied. Now the question is, do the settings match? Let's go see. Let's go back to sequence 1, right? And then from here, right click, go to display mode and multi-camera. And I can expand this as much as possible. And you can even switch between the two angles and decide for yourself, do they match? Here's the thing, they don't match, right? You'll notice like the face is there, the face matches, right? What doesn't match is you got the purple on the left here, and this is more like bluish purple. So how do we get it to match? This is where first we do is select an exportation of the frame. So make sure that frame is selected, click on export. And the way you can select the frames, you can either click like this, or you can press 1 or 2 on the keyboard. You select on export frame. Make sure that you're exporting the frame to a frame grabs folder, and you click select folder, and then from here import into project. Right? Make sure that that's selected. Click OK. Boom, done. Now we go into the project. Double click this, and that's the image that we had just exported. So now what we want to do is make sure we go back to the B cam, right? Which is this color right here. Select adjustment layer, go to color, right? What we were doing before. But you'll notice, hey, while we're still multi-camera mode. So right click, display mode, composite video. And now you'll look at Lumetri scopes. There's a couple things here. I'll just notice, right? I want to bring the top line of the blue, I want to bring that down just a tad. So I'll just select the white and I'll bring that down just enough. And now I will go to source, which is the image that I had double selected. And this is the opportunity for me to match the colors side by side. Just eyeball it. That's all you got to do. Select the adjustment layer, and then you go to curves. And essentially, how do I know what the range for this is? I mean, one way is you literally look at the color here, select the range, and then go start end, right? Start and end, and then you could adjust it accordingly. Or you select the eyedropper, right? But I don't like selecting the eyedropper because the selection is narrow. Boom. You see how narrow that selection is, right? And then I'm leaving all this out. So that's why I like to manually select my range, right? Start and end. And then from here, now you're getting a nice, easy, gradual drop off. Now the question though is, how much of the image do I want selected? So in this case, so you can even reset by double clicking on the timeline, even go up to the green and close to the edge of the red, and you'll notice the whole image is shifting. I'm just gonna adjust this just enough so this color here matches this color here in terms of eyeball. I think we're good. This is it. Like, we're done. The colors are matched. And from here we go to assembly, and we go back to sequence 1, which was where the multi-cam timeline is. Right click, display mode, go to multi-camera, and extend this a little bit further, and boom, this thing looks like it matches. 2 different cameras, 2 different lenses, but the image works like as if it was shot on the same type of camera. So that's pretty much it. Now the question is, how do you edit, right? So we're gonna, in the next video, I'm gonna walk you through the process of editing your clip and then adding any appropriate graphic overlays, and so I'll walk you through how to do that. So stay tuned. Hope you found this video of value and benefit. If you did, hit that like button and leave me a comment below if you have any other questions in relation to what we've done here. See you soon.